President Barack Obama there pledging to close the U.S. military prison at Guantanamo Bay back in 2009. That deadline came and went with no action. Mr. Obama blames Congress for blocking his efforts, but now he's putting the prison's closure back on the agenda.
Going back to a pledge he made during his first presidential campaign, Barack Obama will try to persuade Congress to close down Guantanamo Detention Center. The U.S. president has failed to make good on his 2008 promise to shut down the facility. Many of the 166 inmates have never been tried or charged.
Guantanamo is not necessary to keep America safe. It is expensive. It is inefficient. It hurts us in terms of our international standing. It lessens cooperation with our allies on counterterrorism efforts. It is a recruitment tool for extremists. It needs to be closed.
But that is exactly what he's always planned to do with 48 of the men. Those prisoners, the Justice Department says, can't be tried because they were tortured and can't be released because they're deemed too dangerous. The president wasn't asked about that, but he did comment on the use of force feeding, denounced by doctors' groups as unethical.
I don't want these individuals to die. Obviously, the Pentagon is trying to manage the situation as best as they can. But I think all of us should reflect on why exactly are we doing this?
The question from human rights groups, why did Obama sign the laws that Congress passed, making it illegal to close Guantanamo Bay or move prisoners to the U.S.?
Well, I think the president did make a mistake by embracing some of the underlying policies that define Guantanamo. Military commissions, indefinite detention, and just generally keeping Guantanamo open as a policy discussion item.
But this is a policy promise the president couldn't make happen in his first term with his own party in charge. Trying again in his second with even less political goodwill and a nation, even the president says, isn't really paying attention.
The facility at a U.S. naval base in Cuba houses 166 inmates suspected of terrorism. Critics say their detention is an abuse of human rights. About 100 inmates are staging a hunger strike to protest the way they've been treated. Obama promised after he first took office in 2009 that he would close Guantanamo Bay within a year. But he ran into opposition from members of Congress. They said transferring detainees to U.S. soil would put Americans at risk.
A growing protest with most prisoners now refusing food.
These are the more compliant.
That's correct.
In the past, when I visited Guantanamo, medical staff were already well versed in explaining how they dealt with those on hunger strike.
This catheter is passed through the nostril, into the throat, and into the stomach.
We saw the chair in which prisoners are restrained and force-fed. But this latest protest is on a much larger scale. Some say it's a sign of growing despair.
6 people have committed suicide in that camp and only 3 people have been convicted, and that's not very good odds for a place that's meant to bring justice to America. There will be deaths, there's no question about it.
President Obama says he doesn't want anyone to die, and an extra 40 medical staff have now been sent to deal with the protest. But he may find it harder to persuade a skeptical public to close down Guantanamo when the alternative's holding prisoners closer to home.
I think for a majority of the American public, it's out of sight and out of mind, and they kind of bought into the narrative, do whatever you've got to do to keep us safe from them. And as long as they view this as an us and them proposition, the public doesn't seem to care a lot.
Congress blocked his efforts to transfer some prisoners for trial in the U.S. The president says he'll start those talks afresh. But so far his words have not been matched by deeds. And for now, closing Guantanamo remains a promise unfulfilled.